Hey guys, welcome to the first of what's probably going to turn into a lot of rabbit trail videos. Now, as we're going through this Genesis series, I want to try to keep them streamlined and keep them as short as possible, like a digestible amount of time, right? But the problem is as we're in each of these episodes, there's so many times when I want to run off and be talking about ooh, watch how this whole section is structured, or watch how this section right here actually relates down to this section and what this means together. But I knew that if I put all that stuff within the lessons, it would absolutely make them way too long and kind of bog down the series. So what we're doing is we're going to keep these streamlined with as short of a lesson as possible with a meditation at the end. And then for whatever tangents I want to run off on, we're going to create rabbit trail videos that relate to each episode. So if you want to do a behind the scenes or extras, you can watch these videos and I'll kind of get into all this kind of Bible geek stuff that I love so much. If you want to just stick to the main series, that's totally fine. That's what it's designed for. But if you like talking about all this other stuff, then come on, because this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm not going to give you any kind of meditation or anything like that at the end. I'm just going to kind of throw it up there and let you do with it what you want. So let's get into this. The first thing I want to do is I want to kind of give you an understanding of how to read the text, because their world is so different than ours. Our world is designed, when we read stuff, it's designed to be able to grasp it instantly, consume it, and discard it. When I wake up in the morning, I have a Google Reader, and I will load it, and there'll be maybe 100, 200 articles. But most of it, just by reading the title of it, I can understand what's going on in it, and I can just skip through it. So I can consume a ton of information in a very short period of time. It's as though the writings that we have in our society are 3,000 miles wide, consuming a lot of information, 3,000 miles wide and an inch deep, where the society of the ancients was the exact opposite. What they had was, they had a society and a writing style that was an inch wide and 3,000 miles deep. I mean, if you think about the study that we're doing, it's 2,000 years compacted into 11 chapters. But it's functioning on so many levels underneath the surface that if we read the biblical text like we would read an RSS feed, we're totally going to miss everything that's going on beneath the surface. You see, they handled their texts and their writings so carefully and with such sacredness that, okay, say you wanted to become a student of Scripture back in their day. Say you wanted to enter into a rabbinical school. Well, there was only one entrance exam to get into rabbinical school that you had to pass. You had to memorize the Hebrew Bible. And then you could start studying it. And by memorize, I don't mean oh yeah, what was that verse? And oh, I think what did I memorize last week? Or anything like that. It was totally different. It was they would just start anywhere they wanted to in Scripture. And they would just say a phrase make a joyful noise. And you had to just continue it on unto the Lord, all ye lands, serve the Lord with gladness, come before his presence with singing. Know ye that the Lord he is God, is he that hath made us, and not we ourselves. We are his people and the sheep of his pasture. Enter into his gates with thanksgiving and unto his courts with praise. Be thankful unto him and bless his name, for the Lord is good, his mercy is everlasting, truth endureth through all generations. That's the kind of deep embedded memorization that you had to have for the Scripture before you could begin entering into studying. Because see, what would happen is as they would start studying it, it was almost like reading Braille to them. Because it'd be they would read a turn of phrase over here, and they'd just be reading, and they'd notice the same turn of phrase over here. And they'd be wow, I wonder if this author wrote that to mean to draw our attention to this principle over here. And if this was applied to this, oh my goodness, what ramifications would that have? And this same turn of phrase is over here. I wonder if, but this is the antithesis of what's going on here. And so what would happen is they began to see all these texts on a very three-dimensional level. They could get inside of it in a way that was so profound. And really, you have to be able to have that understanding of it to be able to handle this, to handle Scripture. Because what's going on in Scripture is, it is not just one note throughout the whole thing. You got to think of it as a harmony. There are lots of different authors in Scripture and lots of different sections that are purposefully written to contradict each other. And so a lot of times we'll read stuff and we'll be oh, see, this is flawed because it contradicts whatever. No. Scripture is a harmony. It is a symphony of voices that come together to make this divine chorus. And it has to contradict each other to be able to give you the three-dimensional picture of wisdom and how to understand things. And so it's you have to treat these texts on such a sacred level, and you have to really handle them so carefully to be able to hear the harmony without thinking that's just dissonance, because it's not. It's actually working with each other, even though it may seem like it's contradicting each other in places. It's so awesome. All right, so one example of this, of like how carefully like constructed every word is in Scripture. I was talking about that, because you had to really carefully, if you wanted to crunch 2,000 years into like 11 pages or 11 chapters, you had to be so careful with how you handle everything. Let me give you one example that's just like mind-boggling. What we're studying is the first 11 chapters of Genesis, right? Well, Genesis is part of a larger scroll called Torah. Now, Torah was like their law, but it also had like narrative in it and stuff. So it was more than just like a legal document. It had so many other things going on inside of it. Torah means instruction, or most literally it means like to point to. It like pointed you in the way that you should go. All right. Well, Torah is 4 letters. It's Tav, Vav, Resh, and He. Okay. So, interesting thing here is if you start at the beginning of Scripture and just start looking at the letters, and you come to the first Tav, if you skip letters and you skip 7 times 7, you skip 49 letters, the next letter you're going to come to is Vav. If you skip another 49, you're going to come to a Resh letter, and then you come to a He letter, right? Torah. So then, weird thing, start in Genesis and start at the first Tav. You skip 49 letters, of course, you're going to find a Vav, a Resh, and a He. Leviticus doesn't do it. Instead, we come to Numbers. Numbers does it, but it does it in reverse. So you're actually going to find a He, a Rosh, Vav, Tav. Deuteronomy does it again in reverse. He, Resh, Vav, Tav. What's going on here? Well, when we come back to Leviticus, something amazing happens. If you start at the first Yod and just skip 7 letters, what you find is Yod, He, Vav, He. You find the sacred name of God. It's as though all of this is saying that this writing is designed to point you to the author of this writing, to the holy God of this writing. At the end of each of these books, you will find embedded these same letters again. It's as though God was saying, I wrote this, I wrote this, I wrote this, I wrote this, I wrote this. This is my writing. So all of this is leading us to understand the God of these texts. In a short little section of part of what we're going to be reading from Genesis chapter 1 verse 29, when earth is complete, like all of creation is complete and whole, to Genesis 3:3 when the corruption happens. In this small section of like wholeness, embedded in the text, you can find the 7 seed-bearing edible plants of Israel. You can also find embedded in there the names of the 25 trees that tradition says were in the Garden of Eden. So it's like all of this stuff is happening, and I tell you all this so you can understand that none of this was written haphazardly. They were so carefully constructing every little thing that was going on all these different levels and how they interrelated together. In Proverbs 25:2 it says that it is to the glory of God to conceal a matter, to the glory of kings to search it out. In essence, what they're saying is, the wisdom and glory of God is surpassing our understanding. But yet, great men and great women show their greatness by searching it out, by digging in these texts, by really going beyond where they're at right now and keep pushing themselves to understand this on a deeper and deeper level. It's fascinating. They say that there's a famous quote that says, "The sure barrier to truth is a presumption that you already have it." When I first started reading these texts, I had heard these sermons so many times that I thought, I already kind of know what's going on in this. I know what's going on. And so it became boring to me. But I presumed that I already understood it. When the reality is, I was reading it like a news feed. when it was actually functioning on so many deeper levels that I had no idea about. So I really encourage you to just like come into this series and really start like digging into this text and assuming not that you understand it or that it's wrong, but assuming that it's happening and it's working and it's moving on so many different levels that you really have no clue about. And so you kind of come in with an understanding of, all right, there's more, there's more, there's more. Instead of being like, I don't get that, you move on, or oh, that's boring, you move on. No, it's like, oh, it's boring, and I know that's because I don't get it. So let's keep going, let's keep digging, let's keep pushing further. So anyways, got a couple more rabbit trail videos where we're going to start digging deeper into what the heck is going on with some of the structure of this stuff.